Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story: the Iranian regime's top political and military leaders have been eliminated by U.S. and Israeli strikes. How is it affecting relations between China and Taiwan? Beijing has quietly stopped its ongoing intimidation campaign against the island. Beijing and Moscow are yet to offer Iran any military help. What's behind the hesitation and what's next for Beijing? A China expert breaks it down.
Limited Chinese military support to Iran would be unlikely to change the situation and could instead backfire on Beijing.
Across Chinese social media platforms, many internet users are celebrating with the Iranian people after the strikes on the Islamic regime. Some are calling for help to end the Chinese communist regime.
Clearly, there's a desire from Chinese people to want to be liberated from the totalitarian regime that is the CCP.
The U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran are leading some people to imagine a future China without communism. One expert thinks the strikes could accelerate Beijing's downfall.
They see the Chinese CCP, the Chinese government, is not that strong.
How is Beijing responding to the joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran? Over 40 high-level Iranian officials have been killed, including Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, a key ally of the Chinese Communist Party in the Middle East. Officially, Beijing is calling for respect for Iran's sovereignty and a return to the negotiating table. But Beijing hasn't identified which Iranian leaders are still alive to take part in negotiations. And in the background, there's been a subtle shift in the Taiwan Strait. Right after the attack on Iran, Beijing halted its daily routine of sending military aircraft to intimidate the island over the next 3 days. Instead, it sent only a balloon. By contrast, on Friday, the day before the attack, Chinese aircraft crossed the median line in the Taiwan Strait 6 times. This line is widely seen as the unofficial boundary between China and Taiwan. The U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran over the weekend have eliminated almost all the senior leaders of the Islamic regime, but Iran's closest allies, China and Russia, have yet to offer any support beyond diplomatic gestures. To break it down, China affairs analyst Tang Jingyuan offers his assessment of Beijing's next move and what the strikes mean to the CCP's Middle East and global agenda.
Iran is Beijing's key foothold in the Middle East and its main leverage against the U.S. A regime change in Iran, especially toward a pro-U.S. government, would deal a major blow to the CCP, undoing years of regional investment. U.S. and Israeli strikes threatening Iran's regime could mark the start of this axis's fragmentation.
Moving on to energy, China relies heavily on oil imports. It's the top buyer of oil from Venezuela, Russia, and Iran, all of which are facing serious Western sanctions. Official data shows 80% of Iran's oil exports goes to China. The strikes on Iran once again put China's energy security on the line following the U.S. takeover of Venezuela's oil industry. Tang says tightening the control over China's energy supplies can reduce Beijing's ability to expand its global aggression.
The CCP is not energy self-sufficient and has long pursued a diversification strategy to avoid dependence on any single supplier. The Trump administration's approach aims to systematically restrict China's energy import channels. If those routes are narrowed to just one or two sources, Beijing's supply security would be significantly weakened. Without stable energy access, the CCP's capacity for external expansion would be sharply constrained.
But will Beijing provide Iran with military support? Tang says he believes the chances are minimal, saying he doesn't think China is keen to escalate tensions with the U.S. now, as Washington and Beijing are discussing details of inviting President Trump to visit China next month. And especially now as the large-scale military purges and political infighting within the CCP have intensified to unprecedented levels.
Xi Jinping is facing domestic and international pressures that have weakened his position. His invitation to Trump to visit China suggests he hopes to use the visit to strengthen his standing. If he were to provide military aid to Iran, it would risk a direct rupture with Trump, potentially even leading Trump to cancel the trip. At the same time, the CCP understands that the latest U.S.-Israel strike on Iran reflects strong resolve. If Trump acts, he likely intends to secure a decisive outcome. Limited Chinese military support to Iran would be unlikely to change the situation and could instead backfire on Beijing.
Tang says the CCP would definitely prioritize its own survival over that of its allies at critical moments. Just weeks ago, Beijing withheld support to its close friend, Venezuela dictator Nicolas Maduro, when he was captured by U.S. troops. Flora Hua, NTD News.
Inside and outside of China, a number of Chinese people are voicing support for the military action against the Iranian regime. Many comments online read, "Congratulations to the Iranian people and please help us here in China," as Chinese netizens express their desire to see an end to the decades-long tyranny of the Chinese communist regime. The U.S.-Israeli military action against Iran has sparked heated discussion across Chinese social media platforms. On China's Weibo, almost all the Chinese state-run media coverage expresses support for the Iranian regime while condemning the United States. But in response to these posts, comments from Chinese internet users are drawing a stark contrast. Some mock the media coverage, saying stop faking the defensive capabilities of Iran. Others are celebrating with the Iranian people. Some comments read, "Congratulations to the Iranian people, you are free now." Outside of China, on the overseas version of TikTok, some Chinese people are saying, "Please help us." One post reads, "If we want to be saved, we have to save ourselves." China commentator David Zhang, host of David on China and China Insider on YouTube, sheds light on what's behind the sentiments of these Chinese people.
So clearly there's a desire from Chinese people to want to be liberated from the totalitarian regime that is the CCP. So there is a commonality aspect between the Iranians and the Chinese who are celebrating on the street. Very interesting because in recent years, especially after the lockdowns, you see a lot of brave people online. They obviously use very smart ways, such as using homonyms, using different sentences, using memes or abbreviations to try to bypass the censorship. But people today in China, a lot of them, not everybody, but a lot of them, especially the young people, aren't afraid to talk about the problems and the power that's controlling China right now being a very negative, an evil one.
There are also comments criticizing the U.S. and urging the Chinese regime to provide military support to Iran. But the number of comments cheering for the Iranian people and the U.S. military are hard not to notice. Many such posts and comments are being scrubbed by Chinese internet censors. Also facing censorship is a pop song named "Unfortunately Not You," which many are using to subtly express their wish that the same thing will one day happen to the Chinese communist regime. The current military action against Iran is leading some to envision a future China without the Chinese Communist Party. Guo Guangyu, a senior research scholar at Stanford University, posting on X that as Iranians cry tears of happiness, he becomes tearful himself, wishing that his fellow Chinese could celebrate a similar day in the near future. Alan Zhang is a China affairs analyst. He says that even though regime change in China isn't likely in the short term, the strikes on Iran may accelerate the Chinese regime's own downfall because they're showing the Chinese people that the Chinese regime isn't as powerful as they might think.
They see the Chinese CCP, the Chinese government, is not that strong because they sold a lot of weapons, including the Hongqi, it's called like a red flag, the missile system. They sold their warning radar, pre-warning radar, to Iran, and it doesn't work at all. And the third is that they see the power of the U.S. is just way past any other country, including that of China, of the CCP.
Zhang notes that the death of Iran's supreme leader provides the Chinese people with an example of a possible alternative future.
The CCP still have a pretty tight grip of the society of China. The economy is going down, but it's not. It hasn't become bankrupt yet. It's on that path. So I think what happened today, a lot of things happened today, really encourage Chinese people to think. Maybe we have our new way. We don't have to live under this totalitarian regime. So I think that still, let's keep a close eye on that. I think a lot of things happen. We'll keep pushing that process forward.
Zhang says there are many people in China who are actively thinking about a China without the Communist Party.
They don't speak, but they're thinking. There's an internal organization there. Contacting with some of them. There's enough people who are thinking very actively about what will happen in the post-CCP era.
Zhang says the U.S. should send a clear signal that Washington supports freedom inside China and have confidence that if regime change does happen, China's society will undergo the transition peacefully, and the world will see a better China if the communist regime collapses.